So I'm going to go through this part very quickly. These slides are in your in the slide decks from previous lessons. And thanks to Pat, these are all on the video, so you can also watch them. So the God's plan for the world, and this is the pre-tribulational rapture view. The world's being set up. There are these last days. Then comes the rapture, and then comes the tribulation. The first 3.5 years, the second half is called the Great Tribulation. And then comes the second coming of Christ, which then brings in the millennial reign. And the day of the Lord, which Pastor Cliff will teach next week, we'll talk about when does that start, what does that include, and then we'll end with the new heavens and earth in Jerusalem. So what I did was, and you've seen this slide before, start with the patriarchs on the far left, goes all the way to eternity future, and this is the church age is where we're in now, then the rapture, tribulation, millennium, the new Jerusalem. So this is kind of a chronology of things. Now this is very simplified, and I gave you a lot of verses on that, all right? And part of the world being set up, you've seen this slide of how we went from the Babylonian Empire. This is Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar. Then it goes on to the next king in the Medo-Persia Empire. Then we'll be studying the Greek Empire in chapter 8. Then the Roman Empire, chapter 11. And then there's the Revived Empire and God's Kingdom. So this is all part of God's plan that started way back in 605 BC. And Rome was not conquered, but actually dissolved, really, in 476 AD. No country took over Rome. It just kind of disintegrated when a lot of people groups started infiltrating Rome and took bits and pieces, which has become today's Europe. So Rome was not conquered. All right, so that's kind of the world being set up, and I showed you a number of key steps leading to that. So this, I included what I feel is these are 8 pretty important pieces to it. I'm kind of going to fly by because there's a lot to cover. Just want to give you a kind of recap. The last days, we're in the last days, I think. And all the text in orange just shows you kind of what some of the behavior in the world is today. A lot of mockers, some will fall from the faith, hypocrisy. And then that last verse, 2 Timothy 3, that passage, there's so many people that are lovers of self, lovers of money. You see all this corruption. It's amazing how much money is lost in various budgets. You know, it's like, where did the 200 billion go? It's like, what's going on? It's amazing how much is lost. And so there's just a lot of things that are just really bad, and this is just the description of the last days. Then I just described some of the key events of the rapture leading up to the new heavens and earth. And so the timeline that I showed you was a very simple kind of a diagram. So you get ready with this busy chart here. So this is a more detailed timeline. You can see that you are here is the church age and biblical timeline of the kingdoms on the left. And these are millennial reign. And I want to point out, so the day of the Lord is from here to here. These are the verses and so forth. So there's a lot of content in there. So actually, I printed this out, and I'm gonna tape it on the wall. You can read it later. But this is helpful because it gives you a description of with the verses as to how it's going to be laid out, and this is the pre-tribulational rapture view. If you had a different view, then what you need to do is with these verses, how do you put it in the order to make it fit? Right? So this is I think I went through most of the content. I feel confident that's right, so that's why I even posted, but it's a lot to go through. All right. The rapture, 1 Thessalonians 4 is a key passage. We want to refer to this often, so if you want to have a bookmark in this for today, you can. And 1 Corinthians 15 that talks about the imperishable body that we will receive in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet. So 1 Thessalonians 15, 50 to 53 is important. These again are in previous lessons. Philippians 3 talks about our citizenship is in heaven. And John 14, verses 1 to 3, talks about Jesus comforting the disciples, saying, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." That is, so he's saying a comforting thing about the rapture, which is why it's so different than the second coming. So this is Jesus saying with his own words, and he's going to prepare a place for his followers, the believers, and he says, "I will come again." This is the comforting passage in John 14. And this is really another big piece of the Jewish wedding, if you understand it, that this is part of it. So we'll get into that. All right. I mentioned about prerequisites because this subject is so hard because there's so many things. There's a lot of preliminary considerations. There's some important terms that you need to really dissect and piece together what correlates and what is actually contradictory. And there's some more important terms. So, so the preliminary considerations is what is the relationship with day of the Lord? Where is that with respect to the time of Jacob's trouble, the Great Tribulation? We talked about the concept of birth pangs last time, and there's just so many other things. So again, this is in the previous slides, and there's these terms that really cause great kind of great amount of interpretations. What is the tribulation? What is wrath? What is the trumpet? That's a big one. And all these cosmic disturbances. So they try to match cosmic disturbances to fit their theory versus going with the key text to develop the theory. So the more important terms are birth pangs, which covered. We're covering the second coming today. Pastor Cliff will cover Day of the Lord next week. And then when we get there, the 70 weeks of Daniel, these 4 famous verses, is so loaded. There was a church that spent the whole summer studying just those 4 verses. That's how much is in there. What is the 69 weeks? What is the gap between the 69th and 70th week? What is that? And then what is the 70th week? Okay, so I don't know how many lessons it'll take for us to get through it, but I'll try to keep it succinct if I can. All right, so the birth pangs in Judaism. This is Jewish eschatology way back has already used birth pangs in their writings. They call it the birth pangs of the Messiah because this is a description of the travail that precedes the birth And then after the birth comes the new era, which is the Messianic age. So after the beginning birth pangs, then there's severe birth pangs, then there's birth. That birth is the Messiah coming. So this is how they view it. And I mentioned that there's birth pangs in the Bible. These are just two of them. Previous lesson had, I think, four of them listed. And it uses this language, birth pangs. And then, as many women know, with the birth pangs leads up to a climax of great pain. That comes the birth. But the great pain is described as the time of Jacob's trouble, day of the Lord, the abomination that leads to desolation. That is great pain, great troubles, great distress. So this is, I think, a very appropriate description. By the way, I'm going to send you this slide deck. So, now, so leading up to the Messianic age, the severe labor pains that follow, and then this age comes, that's Jesus coming. He's going to sit on this throne, and those to his right, those who believe in him, put their faith in him, will inherit the kingdom. So that's the great promise that when Christ comes, that believers will inherit the kingdom and actually co-reign with him. So this is all review. Now I want to get into today's lesson, which is the coming of the Messiah is in two phases. There's the rapture and the second coming. And I'm going to describe to you that there's some differences between these two that are so stark that is not reconcilable. Okay? So let me just go through that. What are the differences between the rapture and the second coming? Is there a difference, or is it just one big event? Now, some of these other views view it as one big event or relatively continuous, like the post-tribulational rapture view. They think it's rapture and second coming is basically one event or tied together back to back. So many people believe that the second coming encompasses the rapture. So we're going to search the scriptures and see that these are irreconcilable differences. All right. So first one. During this event, the rapture and the second coming, where will Jesus be? Where will Jesus be? At the rapture, Christ will be in the air. He will be in the air meeting believers. So the 1 Thessalonians 4:16-17 talks about that they will be in the air. It says, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet of God, and dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive will be caught up together with them in the clouds." So Christ will be in the clouds. The believers will meet with Christ in the clouds, in the air. All right? To meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. So this is 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 16 and 17. And John 14, 1-3 tells us where we're going to go when we meet with Christ in the air. This is where he's going to take us to one of the rooms that he's building, preparing for us. So these two passages together says that at the rapture, believers will meet with Christ in the air, and then Christ will take us to the room he's preparing for us. Okay, that's the rapture. At the second coming, Christ will descend, according to the Bible, and his feet will land on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. So if you turn to Zechariah 14, verses 2-4, it says, "For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city will be taken, the houses plundered, the women raped, and the half of the city exiled. But the rest of the people will not be eliminated from the city. Verse 3, then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations as when he fights on a day of battle. On that day, his feet will land on the Mount of Olives, which is in the front of Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives will be split in its middle from the east to west, forming a very large valley. Half of the mountain will move toward the north, the other half toward the south. So Zechariah 14, verses 2 to 4 says, when Christ comes in the second coming, his feet will land on the Mount of Olives, and it will split the mountain. Okay? And if you think about that versus the rapture only the believers see or will meet Christ in the air, but people around will not notice that. But here, when Christ lands on the Mount of Olives and really has an earthquake, many people will know. So it's very different in how many people will know in the two events. So with that, these are two different places. So very clearly, that's two different events. I have to look at Acts 2 to see, Acts 1 and 2 to see if that's Mount of Olives or is he... Yeah, it could be. I can't answer that right now. Sometimes there's different names in the Bible for kind of the same area, and so I can't say that that's where it is. Huh? I'm sorry. The question is it the same place that Jesus ascended to heaven when he left the earth? Yeah, I should repeat the question. So, yeah.
There is a pretty widespread view that the Zechariah verse, it says the sheep will, everything, it doesn't give any indication he's coming from the air. It doesn't actually see anything like land or anything like that. So there is a viewpoint that that might not apply.
Yeah, verse 4 says, on that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives.
That's what it says. It doesn't give the impression of landing or coming from the air.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So, so that's one. We can take a look at that because it's there's other circumstances that surround each event, right? Whether it's Zechariah 14 or 1 Thessalonians 4. Let's go to the next difference. Who is the one that removes people from the earth during this event? Okay. So at the rapture, who removes people from the earth? It's Christ. Christ himself, for the Lord himself will come. So Christ is the one that comes to the air, and the believers will meet him there. So he's the one that does the action. Okay. At the second coming, Christ is not the one that removes people from the earth. He sends his angels to do that. So this is where the angels are working for Christ to pull the wicked people to judgment, actually. So Matthew 13 says, the Son of Man will send forth his angels, and those angels, they are the ones that will gather out of his kingdom all the stumbling blocks, those who commit lawlessness, and so forth. So there's two different so-called agents that are removing. In the rapture, it's Christ. In the second coming, is his angels. Right? Two different group of people. All right, number 3. Let's go to the third one. Who are taken from the earth and who are left on the earth? Okay, so when each of these events happen, some group of people will be taken from the earth and some stay. Now, who are they? Who are they? So at the rapture, the believers are taken from the earth and are going to meet the ones, they're the ones that's going to meet Christ in the air, right? So who are left? The unbelievers. That's where you get the series Left Behind. The unbelievers are on the earth, but the believers are up in heaven. Right. So 1 Thessalonians 4:17 says that. Now at the second coming, the believers are left on the earth, not the unbelievers. The unbelievers are the ones that are taken. Totally reverse, right? So let's, you turn to Matthew 13, we can look at that. So Matthew 13, verses 41 and 42 says, and we saw it in the earlier slide, that the Son of Man will send forth his angels, they shall gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks, those who commit lawlessness. All right, so the angels are collecting all these unbelievers that are definitely sinners, and they will throw them in the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So the angels are going to gather up these people and take them to the furnace of fire. Basically, they're gathering these people for judgment and taking them out. That's Matthew 13, 41 to 42. Later on in the same chapter, verses 49 to 50, it says, verse 49, so it will be at the end of the age, so we know the timing, the angels will come forth and remove the wicked from among the righteous. And the angels, will throw them, the wicked, into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Yeah, Victor.
So when the rapture takes place, and because it's takes those who are dead in Christ and those who are alive in Christ, we're with him. He takes us to the mansion that he said that he prepared for us.
Yeah.
So during the second coming, I guess there were still believers who are left on earth.
Yeah. And I'll describe that in a little bit, but basically, in the second coming, the believers that are on earth are the ones that live through the millennium age. So, at the rapture, the church and believers go up, and it enters the tribulation. And then during the tribulation, there are some survivors, and the second coming comes. The dead would be, the wicked will be taken out. The believers at that time will enter the millennium age, and this is where believers will live in this age that lasts 1,000 years, and with them continuing to build families and so forth, there'll be many believers and unbelievers that are in their normal human state that go through the 1,000 years, right? And then when the second coming is here, this is where some are removed and some are not. So this is why Matthew 13:49 says, "At the end of the age." This is at the end of that 1,000 years. Yeah.
Will the bodies have to be changed to be able to live through the millennium? The people that enter the millennium in the normal state.
No, they don't have to change. I'll get to that in a minute.
We're living more than 1,000 years.
I'll get to that in a minute. Hold that thought, Jane. So yeah, their bodies do not have to change, and there'll be another point coming. So this is where one case is believers out, the other one is unbelievers. And there's another verse that a lot of people think the rapture is a rapture verse, and this is Matthew 24. Matthew 24, in verse, I'll go down to 41. It says, "At that time there will be two men in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. There will be two women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, one will be left." And a lot of times, especially people that believe in post-trib will use this verse to say, well, there's the rapture, that verse, right? And it's not. And the reason why it's not, we can actually look at a parallel passage to explain that. So the parallel passage is there, Luke 17. Luke 17 verses 34 to 37 is the parallel passage to the one I just mentioned in Matthew 24. So, Luke 17, verse 34 says, I tell you, on that night there will be two in one bed, one will be taken, the other will be left. There will be two women grinding at the same place, one will be taken and one will be left. I'm going to skip 36 because in some original transcripts, verse 36 is not included. Verse 37, and responding, I think that's the disciples, they said to him, Jesus, where, Lord? Meaning, so the disciples asking, where are these people taken that are left? Because one remained. And Jesus said to them, where the body is, there also the vultures will be gathered. Where the body is, there also the vultures will be gathered. This is verse 37. So the disciples asked where. Jesus gave a very interesting answer. The corpse is where the vultures will gather. Is a Jewish idiom for saying judgment. So these people are taken out, not rapture, but out to judgment. Okay? So Jesus says the ones who are taken out for judgment. Doesn't have anything to do with rapture, that passage. So people that are with a post-tribulational view cannot use this passage to argue that that's the rapture. So the Bible is clear that at the rapture, believers are taken to heaven, unbelievers stay on the earth. At the second coming, believers stay on the earth to enter the millennium. And as unbelievers are taken out for judgment. Totally different. Okay? Yes? Yes.
So I think I'm always confused when I read this verse because it says, for the coming of the man, Son of Man will be like the days of Noah. I understand that. But then the next verse says, be ready for his coming. Therefore, be on alert, for you do not know which day your Lord is coming. So then it sounds like it's the rapture, right? So it's reverse, right?
Yeah, well, the warning that Jesus gives, like, be ready, he's talking to the people in the millennium. Because people in the millennium, it's amazing that you think about the millennium, Christ is reigning. He's reigning for 1,000 years. The environment is so ideal. And there's longevity, there's no war, and so forth. But yet, at the end of the millennium, there's so many people against God that's going to gather to fight the battle of Armageddon. How is that possible? You got almost a perfect environment, Christ is reigning, and yet you got literally, I think, millions of sinners that defy God. So basically, that tells us that the people that enter the millennium still have a sinful nature. That's why there's still a possibility of sin.
But this verse also could be to us too. Be ready because we don't know when he'll come. He's like a thief in the night. Could it be for both scenarios?
Well, that context is more for the millennium age. There's other passages that say that we ought to be ready as well. Yeah. All right. That's difference number 3. Difference number 4. Another irreconcilable difference is that when Jesus comes, what is the relationship of that to the tribulation? So, for the rapture case, when Jesus comes, what does he do? He comes to rescue Christians before the hour of trial, before the tribulation, before the wrath to come. And there's 3 passages here that really speak to that. This is the comforting message that Christ is saying in these letters. In Revelation 3:10, it says, because you have kept my word of perseverance, I also will keep you from the hour of testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who live on the earth. So this passage is saying, I'm not just going to keep you from the tribulation or the testing itself. I'm going to keep you from the hour of testing, from the time. So what's the context? Starting in Revelation chapter 4, you have all this tribulation happening. So this verse 3:10 is saying, I'm going to keep you from that time period. So this is a very comforting verse, so that believers will not endure all the tribulation, all the trouble, all the distress and war and famine and everything else that's in Revelation chapter 4 through 18. Jesus will keep us from that. Okay. And then 1 Thessalonians 1:10 says, and to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, that is Jesus, who rescues us from the wrath to come. So whatever time of wrath is coming, he's going to rescue us from that time to come. We're not going to be in that time period. Okay. And then 1 Thessalonians 5:9 says, God has not destined us for wrath. Right? But instead, God has given us salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. So there's nothing wrath about us in the future if we're believers in Christ. That's the comforting message. Okay. But the second coming, what's going on? Jesus comes after the tribulation to inflict final judgment, punishment, conquer his enemies, and rule the world from Jerusalem. So Jesus has a very different purpose at the second coming. And Matthew 24 verses 29 to 30 describes this in really good detail. I'm going to read this for you. Just focus on the word after and then. After and then in these two verses. Verse 29. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So that's after the tribulation. Verse 30, and then the sign of the Son of Man coming out on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. So verse 30 says then, so the tribulation had to have occurred, and then the Son of Man comes. So there's the chronology in Matthew 24 verses 29 to 30 that shows that the second coming has to be after the tribulation. Okay. So we can't confuse these time markers. And this is confirmed in the book of Revelation. Chapters 4 to 18 is the tribulation period, and then Christ comes in chapter 19. If you think about Revelation, chapters 4 all the way through 18, Christ has not come yet. It's chapter 19 that he comes to judge. That's the second coming, chapter 19. Okay? So, in one hand, what does Christ do? He rescues Christians from any wrath, from the hour of testing. But in the second coming, he's coming for the purpose of judgment. Okay. All right, the fifth one. There's 6 of them, so just 2 more. The number of signs that are given in each of these. Okay. So before the rapture, there are no signs that are given, which must take place. It can happen anytime. Okay, this is where we get the idea of imminence or imminency. It could happen anytime. A couple of verses here. 1 Thessalonians 1, 9 to 10 talk about wait for his Son from heaven. Why do we wait? Is because he can come anytime. If there's many other signs, we don't have to wait in that sense for the Son to come. And the refrain in the Corinthian church is Maranatha, our Lord come. It's kind of a reminder he can come anytime. Okay. There are many other passages that talk about it, but just think that you wouldn't tell somebody to wait for his coming on the rapture if he cannot come at any time. The big difference is the second coming is completely different. We have a lot of details on the signs that must take place. So in the other views, before Christ comes, what happens? Well, if you believe in the post-tribulational rapture view, all the 7 years worth of tribulation has to happen first. So when that starts and you say, oh, that's the bowl judgment, that's the trumpet judgment, that's telling you, hey, the second coming is coming. So those are signs, so you can kind of practically calculate, right? And then the abomination of desolation, that has to occur before the second coming. And that one act is so amazing. If you think about it, how can the Antichrist coerce the world to have a treaty with him? Right? So that's a huge challenge itself. What world leader can do that? After that, what world leader can say, oh, okay, the Golden Dome, let's bulldoze that. How hard is that? Right? And then because the whole so-called Temple Mount, that whole area has to be basically bulldozed so they can build a new temple. Why do you need to build a new temple? So he can desecrate it. What leader can do that? Can you imagine somebody that can actually go into the heart of Jerusalem and work out a deal that can actually wipe out those other so-called sacred places in order to build a temple? So if that happens, you know that all that has to take place before the second coming. So if you see a lot of turmoil in the Middle East and the Temple Mount getting a lot of action with respect to who's going to take control, that's a sign. Yes.
I was going to say that back in Jesus' time, he said that this temple will be destroyed. Right? And the priests were really laughing at him. Mm. Are you kidding me? Herod just rebuilt this temple. Probably within, 50 years or 20 years of existing. And they did not imagine that whole temple collapse. But it did in 70.
Yeah.
And so, I think to say that, how can we even have a situation where a new temple can be rebuilt and the dome, the Muslim dome can be destroyed. That can happen.
Yeah.
Within 100 years at least.
It can happen.
Because based on history.
Yeah, it can happen. It's just amazing, like how the amount of Muslim uproar for that would be like. But this Antichrist world leader somehow makes it happen.
The Lord lets him.
Yeah, the Lord permits that, right? So all this to say is that all these things has to occur. The seal judgments, trumpet judgments, and all this has to occur before the second coming. So there are many, many signs that has to occur. So my point is that's a huge difference. Where the rapture, no sign needs to happen. But second coming, all these things has to happen. All right, one last one. What's the difference? The kind of bodies that the believers will possess. That's the last one. And this addresses your question, Jane. So what are the kind of bodies will believers possess at the rapture versus at the second coming? At the raptures, believers are given glorified bodies. 1 Corinthians 15 says that we will be given I'll read the verse, starting in verse 51. Behold, I'm telling you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will raise imperishable or incorruptible. We will be changed. For this perishable must put on imperishable, and this mortal must put on immortality. So this passage, 1 Corinthians 15, says that during the rapture, we will receive glorified bodies. Incorruptible, imperishable, immortal, fitting to exist in heaven, suitable for heaven. Okay, That's why at the end of 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 18 says, therefore encourage or comfort one another with these words. How comforting it is that, especially, if you have a achy back or something, it's like, I'm going to get a new, I will have a imperishable body. All these aches and pains will go away. And this all happens in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Now, at the second coming, it's completely different. Okay. Believers who make it through this tribulation will enter into the millennial kingdom in their regular earthly bodies. Why? It's because they will marry, bear children in their regular mortal bodies. They will not get glorified bodies yet, not at this point. Okay? So if you look at a few passages in, first, just to set a foundation, Matthew 25, verses 31 to 34 says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, that's the second coming, and all the angels with him, and then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on the right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So that passage in Matthew 25 says believers will inherit the kingdom, will enter into the millennium. And it doesn't say they're going to get glorified, right? Glorified bodies. They're not going to be resurrected at this point. They go straight into the millennium kingdom in their earthly bodies. And Isaiah 65 talks about what is it like to be in the millennium age. So if you wonder what is it going to be like in the millennium age, turn to Isaiah 65. Verses 17 to 25 talks about this description, which is a reward for the remnant who made it through the millennium, to get to the millennium. So it says, there's a new heavens and earth. And some people confuse that with, wait a minute, is that Revelation chapter 21 and 22? No, it's not. It's actually talking about the renewed earth during the millennium kingdom. Okay? Isaiah 65, starting verse 17. Why do we know that? It's because Isaiah later describes death, that people will live a lot longer and so forth. So that's a renewed earth, not the new heavens and earth in the end of the book of Revelation. Okay, so that's why he's talking about the millennium timeline. It talks about that. I'll read in verse 21. They will build houses and inhabit them. They will also plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They will not build or another inhabit. They will not plant and another eat. For as the lifetime of a tree, so will be the days of my people. They will live very long lives. For my chosen will fully enjoy the work of their hands. So whatever you work for, you actually get to enjoy. Not like perhaps in this world now. They will not labor in vain. They will not give birth to children for disaster, meaning some kind of disease or some kind of stillborn or some other things. And they are the descendants of those blessed by the Lord, and their descendants with them. So, in other words, longevity will be restored. They will live longer. They will continue to bear children. So here is a completely different picture. So here, the believers that enter millennium, and as the second coming is, they are still regular bodies, and then comes their resurrection. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what I don't understand, I don't think that they have their glorified spiritual bodies, but I just feel like it seems like there must be some kind of special blessing upon the people that live through the tribulation and enter the millennium, because I mean, if I entered right now, I'd only live until my 80s or 90s. Normally.
Yeah.
But then, as you you're going to have a longer lifespan, so something has to change within me. or anybody else to be able to live that long.
Yeah, and part of it is the environment. It could be that the environment is more pristine. Like much better air, more sun, more different things. Because it says that if you live at 100, you're kind of cursed.
Right.
So they probably live, many hundreds of years. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I would want to believe that unbelief, or if the believer walks into the home, that they survive the tribulation, that they will have some extra life extended to them. I don't know if that maybe God needs to have that still. That you've got something more than what your earthly body was. That is the best.
I don't know how they can do things.
It's like, does that mean it's going to partially transform you?
Yeah.
And this is all that gets to the whole time. I'll say it long, that it's 25, 30 years old. They still get a children. And if they got some extra special needs out of the body, find that challenging. But believers are going to have anything special.
Maybe it's sort of like what God does to the earth, heavens and earth. He doesn't make them all new, like at the end of Revelation, but he blesses them to be to remove to the curse to a degree. So maybe that.
I mean, you look at Methuselah, right, and 4 women before that who lived well into their hundreds of years of age without a type of glorified body, right? And so, and even 4 children who went into special occasions, 4 women at an older age for certain occasions and purposes God allowed to place. So, who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, back in the day of Methuselah and others, you're talking people that live roughly 700 to 900 years old, and this is without a renewed earth. So as you read Isaiah 65, there's aspects of it where the environment's better, the whole creation order, a lot of the curse has been lifted, where, well, how can a lion lay down with a lamb, right? Things like that. So my take is the environment's better, there's probably a lot less stress, there's no war. So there's many aspects for so-called better living. It's hard to say if somebody enters the millennium at, say, age 25, maybe they'll live to 100, 120, but then as the ones that are born, then maybe those would live way more than, let's say, 100, probably like 300, 400, 500 years old at least. So there's that kind of aspect to it. One thing I'm not gonna touch on the subject, but I want to just mention it is, a lot of the millennium reverses the curses in Genesis. So you can actually pair them up. This is a whole study in itself, that the curses that come in Genesis, how is it being reversed in the millennium? And one of the outcomings of that is to have that, it'll be longer life, right? But it's interesting. I don't want to get into it, but it's a big study in itself. How does the reversing of the curse happen with the judgments in Revelation? So I'm gonna keep on going these rabbit trails. It's like I gotta stop because there's just so much all over.
It sounds like the rapture, the mechanism to be on the ready. I think that's more in the sense of after the second coming, at the end of the tribulation, you can't put your finger on the exact hour that's going to happen. It's like more than be ready to be alert for that. Daniel had an additional 75 days at the end of the tribulation. So exactly when he's going to come, we know there's got to be 7 years mark at 7 years.
Yeah.
So you're not going to know the humans, believers on the earth, the believers is not going to know that exact time. So I think it was more of a statement to break that. that hour is not going to be known. Versus thinking it's kind of swapping back to the talking factor.
Yeah. The hour is not known to where it's kind of also a sign of God's grace, even for the unbelievers in that, toward the end of the millennium.
The exact hour is not exactly you can count. Okay, exactly. And if it's set in your mark, and it's going to show up, then that would give you a sense of the unbelievers. But they do all the way
Yeah.
You not only don't see Boston, right? You're a man who is stronger, faster, maybe, we'll come to a point where we're able to stabilize to 1,000 years old by then. And I felt like this.
It's all God's plan. Yeah. Anyway, it makes I think this helps us understand Isaiah 65 more as to what it might be like. Right. So in summary, I've shown 6 differences concerning what takes place at the rapture versus the second coming. The place where Jesus will be, who removes the people, and who are removed and who stays. Jesus' relationship to the tribulation, the number of signs that are given, none versus many, and the kind of bodies the believers will possess. And I think if you look at these 6 differences, if you take any other view, use this as a litmus test. How would they justify any of these or explain these differences? Because if they can't, then because here I'm just presenting scripture of these 6 cases. So last slide, wrapping up, I think they're irreconcilable, these differences, and we can't be contradictory because the Bible doesn't contradict. So that's why I believe these 2 must be different events. So just let the Bible speak for itself. That's kind of what we're doing. Draw the conclusion that it has to be a pre-tribulational rapture. And if you don't have this view, consider these differences. Test it out. If something that you think is more appropriate, then does it pass the test of these situations? So my prayer is that this is encouraging and comforting to you, because we want to live with a glorious hope that Jesus can come anytime, not with these other views that could be different. So that's today's lesson. I just hope that this helps you. All right. Okay. Well, let me close in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for the truths that are in it, and we thank you that you are the truth, and we know that the Bible doesn't contradict. So God, as we looked at these differences, I pray that your Spirit be our teacher. Help us to meditate on it, to weigh one versus the other, the various passages, and maybe just learn about it and really strengthen our convictions with it. So Father, we thank you for this morning in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.